When we answered the initial questions that QuickBooks offered us when we set our file up, I mentioned that we could change any of the functionality that we wanted in here. We could switch things on at a later stage. So if I go to the little gear in the top right here, we can do that through the accounts and settings. So in the first column under your company, accounts and settings there, we've got options to switch functionality on and off in here. So down the left hand side, different areas of setup, but the really interesting, the exciting stuff is in the advanced. So if we dash straight into advanced, get straight there, yes, we'll switch to that section. And this is got the areas that we'll be interested in terms of setting up and adding in different functionality. So you can see from the top here, it offers me a particular first month of my financial year. So the first thing we're going to do really is make sure that is correct. Are we working a January to December year? If it's not correct, we can go to the little pencil mark in the right hand side and we can change that year setting. So we can change that to the year that's appropriate for our business. The impact of that is that when we're running reports later, we might run a report for a particular financial year, QuickBooks will know the year that we're operating. It also knows at the end of the year, and we're getting a bit technical in a way, it knows to move the profit to retain earnings at the end of the year because we've told it the year end. So that's important in terms of getting our reporting set correctly. First month of the tax year, again, normally will be in line with your year end. So again, most of the time we're leaving that as the same as the financial year. Counting method in here is set to accrual, which is what we'd expect. It's based on invoice dates, based on bill dates, as opposed to being based on when cash comes in and out of the business. So that setting is nothing to do with the VAT settings in QuickBooks, that's purely the reporting settings. So accrual is quite common there. Closing the books becomes very important to us later on. That's our protection within QuickBooks. And there will be an explanation of that in more detail in a further session that we're running in the setup of QuickBooks, because that is an important area for us. We need to protect our data, our past data, and that's going to be within the closing of the book settings there. And finally, in the top section here, I've got a default tax rate. So mine is set here to exclusive, which basically means that when I enter things in, it's expecting a net figure for my VAT, and it will work out the VAT and the gross figure in here. So the initial settings at the top here are less about functionality, more about the actual structure of the file. But then we get onto functionality because we can switch on settings like the construction industry scheme. If we're involved in the construction industry and the construction industry scheme, we'll switch that on. That will give us some functionality in that world. We've got options here to switch on certain categories. So classes and locations is an area we might consider functionality wise. That's going to expand our reporting possibilities within here. We may well use projects. It's switched on in this case here. If we're using jobs projects, then again that's a functionality we would want to switch on. We may well be tracking time, staff time on jobs, reporting time against jobs. Again, we've got options there to use timesheets. We may be using currency, another functionality we may well end up switching on. So you can see here in the advanced settings, we can switch some of these functionalities on at a later point. Yeah. In terms of the other areas initially in the questionnaire that we can switch on, one of the areas was relating to stock. So again, if we go into sales down the left hand side here, we do have an option under products and services here to track quantity on hand, start tracking stock in here if we are dealing with stock in our file. So that's where we can switch our stock on. And if we're dealing with VAT, we can switch VAT on after the event by going down the left hand side here to taxes. We switched it on initially, so it's going to already be set up in here, but this is the area where you would go and say, right, let's set up our VAT, switch it on from within here. So that's the areas that you will be looking at initially to look at the settings within your QuickBooks file.